And for more, we're very pleased to be joined by Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, Republican from Tennessee. Congresswoman, thank you very much for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Good to be with you. Thank you.
You as well. As some of the details unfolding here, I have a question. If the White House, and it now seems not just Democrats, but even some Republicans in the Senate, insist that a debt limit extension here, let's say for another 6 weeks or 6 months, whatever the time period, is attached to reopening of the government, will House Republicans go along with that?
Well, what we want to do is make certain that there is a process for the debt ceiling discussions, and that is what we have laid out. Now, the continuing resolution, the spending bill, to which the slowdown or partial shutdown, whatever you want to call it, is attached to, those are separate measures. And we didn't want the government to shut down in the first place. So we would really appreciate if the Senate were to agree to sit at the table with us to go through negotiations or a budget reconciliation and work with us to get the government open.
I know you've seen the polls today, both from Gallup, a Wall Street Journal here. By every estimation, they're devastating, particularly for the GOP. The lowest in the history of the poll is the approval rating of the Grand Old Party right now. The view of the party here, less than a quarter have a positive view of Republicans, and the job approval rating is sitting at 24%, while 70% have a disapproval rating. In the history of the poll, these are the lowest numbers. You know and I know Republicans aren't in a position here of strength to negotiate. Is it time here to just throw in the towel and say, okay, maybe this was a strategy without an end game, let's move on, let's reopen the government here, and let's fight for another day?
Well, I have to tell you, there is a very solid end game, and it's the end game that people have been asking us to pursue for years. And that is to get out of control federal spending under control. And when people are running the government shutdown clock, I like to ask, are you running the debt clock? Because that's what this discussion is all about. And it is about finding a way to stop borrowing $2 billion a day in order to keep the lights on. That's what we're doing. Are you okay with borrowing $2 billion a day? Because I'm not. I certainly know that my grandsons are not. And I would hope that we would finally say, you know, this is not so much about today as it is about the strength of this nation next year, next decade, next century, and making certain that we practice fiscal responsibility, that we are good stewards of the taxpayer money. And for all of the hubbub about, well, you have to pay for this and you have to pay for that, the American people are the ones that put every penny that this government has access to into that till.
To that
and
point,
the
Congresswoman,
individuals that are saying,
yeah, fair enough. But to that point, the American public has spoken clearly. And while I don't think many disagree with you that we do have a debt issue in this country, the tactics in which we've got to where we are right now, the public has spoken as emphatically as I've seen any poll ever done on this, certainly in the history of this. They don't like the idea of a shutdown. They don't like the idea of going over the debt cliff. And they hold Republicans clearly responsible, most specifically the Tea Party. So I'm saying, given the reality on the ground, and given what some of the key stakeholders, the idea, I know you know Mike Lee and have a favorable opinion. He is running underwater now in the state of Utah. I mean, just as an example of this, they are out for blood, the public is, on the Tea Party for where we are now. Isn't it time to wave the white flag?
No, it is not time to wave the white flag. It is time for the Senate to sit at the table and negotiate with us. They have wanted this shutdown because they knew that Republicans would be blamed, because we only control 1/2 of 1/3 of the federal government. That's it. They are the ones that wanted the shutdown. We've sent 4 different CRs. We have sent 16 different funding bills. The House is the one that passes a budget every year. The Senate passed one this year for the first time in 5 years. Then they didn't want to go to conference with us on that budget. We do not and did not want a shutdown. We continue to say It is time to deal with the spending issues. And when we talk with people, last night I did a telephone town hall with over 13,000 of my constituents. And as we discussed the issue, and they realized 83% of the government was open and functioning, and not any of them had interfaced in any way with something that was not open and not functioning. And so many of my constituents would email and Facebook and talk back with us and say, you know, if this is what it takes to get spending under control, I want you to get the government open, but I also want to make certain that you take this opportunity to address the spending that is in front of us. And I think that they want that fiscal responsibility, and my hope is that we can do just that, that we can find a way to get the government open, that the Senate will negotiate with us. We do not want to default on the debt, and certainly we have been giving them plenty of offerings of what we would like to see in a debt ceiling. You know, we have raised the debt ceiling 53 times over the last 4 decades, and 27 of those times it has been negotiated with spending reductions involved in that process. So it is time for the White House and the Senate to sit down and work with us, and we look forward to working with them.
I want to give you a few comments from fellow Republicans, and then I want to get your perspective on this schism that is playing out for the world to see within the party. Chris Christie, a major Republican in our neck of the woods, said, I don't think you hear responsible Republican leaders advocating for a shutdown of the government. You had Haley Barbour, who I know you know, former governor of Mississippi, former chairman of the RNC, said on this shutdown approach, it never had a chance. And finally, John Sununu, he said it's time for someone to act like grown-ups in this process. And he spoke for many, where he went on to go after the Tea Party and the Ted Cruz of the world, who might have lit the match, but they ran when all hell broke loose, and they weren't around here to pick up the pieces. The backlash against the Tea Party, we're hearing from business groups right now, from the financial sector, from fellow Republicans. Have you seen the Tea Party come under attack as much as it has in the last week since you've been in D.C.?
Well, before the Tea Party was the so-called Tea Party, we had a 4-year fight against imposition of a state income tax in Tennessee. And the citizens of our state who stood up and fought that won that battle. And we still don't have an income tax in Tennessee. It serves us very well not having it. And those of us who were fighting that income tax at that point in time, they certainly, the mainstream media, if you will, everyone came against us and said, oh, you need to go ahead and agree to this tax. Now, I will agree that we're not the ones who wanted to see there be a government shutdown or a slowdown. What we did want to do is have the Senate to work with us. And I would remind you, when it comes to the health care bill, Obamacare, I'm the one that had the bill that would exercise a 1-year delay, and we had bipartisan support on that. And because we attached it to one of the continuing resolutions that we sent to the Senate in order to get them to come and work with us on how we were going to find a pathway to fund the government and keep it open. And we're as disappointed as everybody else that the Senate did not. But I tell you what, when you've sent 4 continuing resolutions and a budget over to the Senate and they won't sit down with you, I don't know how much else we could have sent over there. As I said, we've sent 16 different funding bills over there that would fund over 50% of the government, and they haven't taken any action on any of those. I can certainly understand and appreciate people's frustration.
Do you consider yourself, Congresswoman, a member of the Tea Party? And if not, why?
I do not belong to the Tea Party caucus. I have lots of friends that are in the Tea Party, that are involved in 9/12 groups and different activist groups. I've always been a member of the Republican Party.
Why? I'm sure you've been asked, because I've seen in some of the literature people saying that they proudly call you among them if you don't consider yourself. Why wouldn't you wave the same banner that some of the Tea Party folks very proudly do, as you know, in the House?
Oh, I love the Tea Party organizations. I don't think the Tea Party return address should be Washington, D.C. I think it should be anywhere USA. And as I said, I do a lot of work, a tremendous amount of work with the Tea Party in my district, and led that grassroots effort in my state, which would have, that was 98 to 2002. It was before you had the Tea Party organized as such. And I understand why people have been so attracted and drawn to the Tea Party. They are so frustrated with what they see happening in Washington, D.C. Waste, fraud, and abuse of taxpayer funds, disrespect for the institutions of government, disrespect for the Constitution. So it's easy to understand why they are so drawn to that. And I will say this. Our Tea Party and 912 organizations, activists and grassroots organizations, the issue groups, have done a great job educating people on civics and government participation.
Have they done a great job for the party? Because, and you're closer to this than me, you can't turn anywhere today without seeing Republican go against Republican for both not only the strategy, but the end game, and they're pointing fingers directly at the Tea Party. For the polls that I've gone over, among approval or views of the Tea Party, less than 20% of the public has a positive view of them. Many people look at the Ted Cruz of the world and see where the GOP finds itself today. Obamacare more popular today than it was 2 weeks ago, and again they blame the Tea Party. Do you think the Tea Party has been good for your political party?
I think the question to ask is, what about organizing for America for the Democrats? What do people think about organizing for America and
fair
George
enough.
Soros?
No, fair enough. But you know what? Nobody
move
thinks
on
fair.
and some of those groups.
You got. No. You time out. You're right. You got liberal groups on the Democratic side, but they don't basically command the agenda for the party. Nobody has to go check with OFA or those groups before they make policy. Or they certainly don't wave the flag in Washington.
I would disagree with you on that.
Okay.
I think that I really would disagree with you on that.
All right. Well, we can end it there. Congresswoman Blackburn, I appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.